The evening sky hung heavy above the park, bruised purple and gold, as if it sensed the fury tearing through Keron Pollard's soul as he stormed down the gravel path with a force that made people instinctively step aside, though none dared look directly at him. His jaw was clenched so tight the tension stabbed into his temples, and the anger in his chest felt like a wildfire spreading too fast to contain. Every breath he dragged in was sharp, uneven, and laced with frustration, so violent he feared he might actually break something, or someone, if he didn't get space to think. Betrayal within his own Mafia empire was something he expected from enemies, not from men he had handpicked, trained, and fed loyalty to like a religion. His pulse hammered against his ribs, as if trying to escape the madness boiling inside him. He hated weakness. But this anger felt uncontrollable, toxic, and dangerous. He needed air. He needed silence. He needed escape from the suffocating walls of his collapsing world. But the universe had no intention of granting him peace. Just as Keron slowed his steps, trying to steady the storm in his chest, someone, appeared at the corner of his vision, snatching the breath out of him. He froze mid-step, his chest tightening as though a cruel hand had twisted his heart. The world blurred, the laughter of nearby children faded, even the fountain's soft trickle became a distant whisper. Everything dimmed, except for her. Standing under the warm gold of the setting sun, glowing like she didn't belong to this world at all, was Stella, the woman he had walked away from 4 years ago. The woman he had cut himself from to protect her from the blood-soaked shadows of his life. The woman whose absence had felt like living with an unhealed wound. Yet here she was, unexpected, unannounced, unreal, like a memory he had tried and failed to bury. His breath shattered as he took in the sight of her. Stella looked almost the same, yet painfully different. Her once bright eyes now carried exhaustion he knew he had helped cause. Her soft curls danced lightly in the breeze, as if trying to steady themselves. But what stole the rest of his oxygen were the 2 small hands she held, 2 boys standing beside her, mirroring each other like reflections in shattered glass. 2 identical faces, 2 tilted heads, 2 pairs of eyes that matched Keron Pollard's unmistakable deep brown. His heartbeat crashed to a halt. It couldn't be real. Yet nothing, not logic, disbelief, or shock, could deny the truth standing before him. Their gaze, their posture, the stubborn lift of their chins. Those boys looked exactly like him. Something deep inside Keron cracked open. He swallowed hard, but the lump in his throat grew heavier, pressing against every emotion he had locked away. His chest burned with something far more terrifying than anger, fear. A soul-cutting fear that he had missed moments, years, a life he never knew existed. Stella noticed him then, and the expression on her face carved a fresh wound through him. Her breath hitched, her body tense as though struck. Her eyes widened, not with joy or longing, but with fear and pain, emotions soaked in their unresolved history. Instinctively, she pulled both boys closer, like a mother shielding her young from danger. The gesture sliced deeper than any blade. She thought he was a threat. Maybe she believed he always had been. Keron couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe right. His feet stayed rooted while his heart sprinted toward her, desperate for answers. He wanted to call her name, ask why she was here, why she never told him, why life was cruel enough to bring him face to face with what he had always wanted but never dared hope for. Stella's lips parted, but no sound came. Her eyes glimmered with trapped emotion. For a moment, time froze, locking them in a moment neither was prepared to face. Keron took a single step forward, his chest tight enough to crack. Words battled in his mind. Stella? Why? Are they? But none formed. Before he could speak, something shifted. One of the twins, small, brave, curious, stepped forward. His big eyes studied Keron with startling focus, as though searching for something familiar. The boy tilted his head just slightly, the exact way Keron did when analyzing someone. The resemblance sent a cold shiver down Keron's spine. The boy's fingers tightened around Stella's hand, but he didn't look away. Then, in the softest voice, fragile, innocent, pure, he whispered a single word, "Daddy." The world stopped breathing. Keron felt the ground tilt beneath him, air ripping from his lungs as he staggered half a step. His heart pounded violently, tearing into his ribs. Stella's face drained of color, her lips trembling, not because the child had spoken, but because of the truth his tiny voice revealed. The universe punched Keron in the chest, an emotional blow so intense he didn't know if he was breaking apart or waking up from a 4-year nightmare. The child's question lingered like a lit fuse waiting to explode. Stella squeezed their hands tighter, fear flooding her eyes as though terrified of what Keron might do, say, or finally understand. Keron parted his lips, unsure whether to collapse or scream, because every emotion he had buried, love, regret, longing, grief, erupted inside him at once. The park faded, the sunset, the trees, the breeze. None of it mattered. Only the truth, only the moment, only the devastating possibility that his entire life had changed in the blink of a child's innocent eyes. And as the tension thickened, Keron stepped closer, his breath trembling as he whispered, voice raw with fear and need, "Stella, why does he think I'm his father?" 2. Stella stiffened instinctively, pulling the twins closer to her chest as Keron took another step forward, his towering frame tense with a mixture of disbelief, fear, and heartbreak so raw it made the air between them feel like it could ignite at any second. His eyes darted between the small faces of the children and Stella's own, searching desperately for answers, for confirmation, for anything that could either shatter him completely or give him a reason to hope. And his voice, rough, strained, almost foreign to him in its vulnerability, broke through the quiet of the park as he whispered, "Stella, who are they?" The words hung heavy, almost like a blade, cutting into the space around them, and Stella's lips pressed tightly together, her jaw clenching as though the strength it took to speak might betray the secrets she had carried alone for years. Finally, her voice came, low, steady, and yet trembling. "My sons," she said, the syllables wrapped in a tension that made Keron's chest ache, and before he could form another word, she tried to move past him, her steps quick, urgent, but Keron's body moved faster, placing himself directly in her path, the desperation in his eyes raw and undeniable, pleading for the truth that he feared and longed for at the same time. He crouched slightly to meet the boy's eyes, studying the roundness of their cheeks, the stubborn tilt of their tiny chins, the deep brown of their irises, the exact mirror of his own, and a surge of disbelief, fear, and hope collided in him, making his heart pound against his ribs like a trapped animal, leaving him momentarily speechless as memories of Stella flooded back with brutal, unrelenting clarity, the laughter they had shared, the moments of closeness he had lost to pride, the nights he had spent alone thinking of what could have been, and now this, proof of a life he had missed entirely, the children he had never held, never guided, never protected. "Are they mine?" he breathed, the words more a prayer than a question, his entire body trembling under the weight of possibility, as though the universe itself had stopped to watch him receive an answer he both feared and craved. Stella didn't answer immediately. She swallowed hard, her throat tight with the memories and fear she had held for years, her gaze flickering to Keron, searching for the right words, for the safety of her sons, and yet she remained silent, holding them protectively, letting the unspoken truth linger in the tense air between them, each second stretching like eternity, the world narrowing down to nothing but the four of them, standing frozen in the park as though time itself had paused. Keron's fists clenched at his sides, the raw, uncontainable mix of anger, heartbreak, and longing surging through him, his mind racing as he tried to process the impossible, his lips parting, ready to demand more, to plead for answers. But before he could speak, the distant roar of an engine split the fragile bubble of tension around them. And he turned just in time to see an SUV with blacked-out windows slowing across the street, the engine rumbling like a beast, carrying with it a threat so immediate and palpable it made his skin prickle and his heart spike with adrenaline. Stella's face drained of color instantly, her body stiffening as a wave of terror washed over her like a cold, unrelenting tide, and she whispered in a voice choked with panic, barely audible over the engine's growl, "Keron, they found us." And in that single shattering sentence, the fragile bubble of reunion shattered, replaced by danger, by the knowledge that their lives and the lives of these innocent children were no longer their own. Keron's instincts ignited, a fire he hadn't felt since the earliest days of his rise in the underworld, flaring to life in his veins, and his gaze sharpened. Scanning the SUV, calculating, predicting, every fiber of his being screaming at him to act, to protect, to claim what was his. Yet even as his muscles tensed, a part of him froze, stunned by the enormity of what he had just discovered, by the revelation of the children, by the betrayal and fear that now lurked around them like a predator, circling its prey. And the twins, sensing the sudden shift, clung tighter to Stella's sides, their small hands gripping her clothing as their innocent eyes darted between the looming figure of Keron and the approaching black vehicle, their trust implicit yet fragile, leaving Keron's chest burning with a fierce need to shield them, to demand answers, to reconcile years of absence, and yet to survive the immediate threat that now barreled toward them with deadly intent. The park, once a quiet refuge, now felt like a cage, every tree, every shadow, every flicker of movement a potential danger, a potential ambush, and Keron's mind raced through possibilities, plans, escape routes, the speed of the SUV, the weight of his sudden responsibility, and the sheer intensity of emotions, rage, regret, love, protectiveness, desperation, all colliding violently inside him as he took a calculated step towards Stella. Placing himself squarely in front of the twins, his presence a living barrier between the threat and the fragile family before him, his eyes scanning for any hint of who might be inside that car, his body coiled like a predator ready to strike, and the tension mounted as the SUV slowed to a stop, engine idling ominously, a shadowy figure visible behind the tinted glass, watching, waiting. Intent clear even through the darkness of the windows, and Stella's whisper cut through the heavy air again, trembling and urgent. "Keron, they've found us." Each word striking like a hammer, each syllable amplifying the stakes, the danger, the impossibility of the moment, leaving Keron on the edge of a decision he knew could destroy everything or save everything. And in that instant, the park itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what he would do next, while the twins' small hands twined with Stella's, the innocent question from moments ago still echoing in the air. "Daddy?" A reminder that even amidst imminent threat, the fragile threads of love, family, and fate were dangerously, heartbreakingly intertwined. And Keron's next move would determine whether they survived this moment or became victims of the shadows hunting them relentlessly. Keron's instincts ignited like lightning in his veins, a surge of adrenaline so fierce it burned through every ache, every lingering regret, every piece of 4-year-old guilt as he planted himself firmly in front of Stella and the twins, his broad frame a living shield, eyes narrowing, every muscle coiled like a panther ready to strike as the black SUV's door creaked open with deliberate slowness, revealing the dark, menacing figure of a man in a mask, his posture confident, his presence exuding the kind of cold, calculated danger that spoke of a life lived in violence, and his voice cut through the tense evening air, icy and merciless. "Hand over the boys," he commanded. His gaze fixed on Stella with a predator's precision, a warning wrapped in a threat, every syllable pressing down like a physical weight on Keron's chest. "Or things get ugly," the masked man added, and the words slithered into the park like poison, contaminating every ounce of safety Keron had tried to create for the family he had just found. Stella's body trembled, a visible ripple of fear and desperation, and she clutched the twins tightly, their tiny hands quivering as they pressed against her legs, sensing the danger she could barely contain. And Keron's own rage boiled, an uncontrollable inferno ignited by years of knowing. She'd been living under this kind of constant threat without his knowledge, without his protection, and every unspoken accusation, every lost year, every stolen moment surged through him like molten fire. And he growled, low, dangerous, unwavering. "You're not touching them," stepping forward so fiercely that the soles of his boots dug into the gravel, creating a subtle tremor beneath him, a warning to any who dared threaten what he had finally reclaimed. The masked man's lips curved into a smirk, cruel, knowing, unbothered, as if Keron's fury was an amusing prelude to a game he had already won. And he said with chilling confidence, "We warned her. Running doesn't change fate." His tone mocking, heavy with insinuation, heavy with menace, a voice that made the hairs on the back of Keron's neck stand on end and every nerve in his body scream for action. Without another word, the man produced a gun from beneath his jacket with fluid, practiced motion, aiming straight at Stella, and the sun seemed to dim, the light of the evening slicing the shadows of the park like knives as Keron lunged forward without hesitation, his body moving faster than thought, instinctively throwing himself between Stella and the weapon. Feeling the sharp, sudden crack of the shot tear through the air, and then excruciating, searing pain ripped through his shoulder, a violent reminder of the stakes. But he refused to collapse, refusing to allow weakness even for a heartbeat, planting himself firmly despite the wound, forcing himself upright while every fiber of his being screamed in protest. Stella screamed his name, a sound so raw, so visceral, so heartbreakingly urgent, it pulled at every corner of his soul. And Keron's teeth gritted against the pain, eyes burning with fury as he glared at the masked figure, every muscle trembling yet controlled. Ready to strike, to defend, to annihilate anyone who dared harm the children or the woman who had haunted his dreams for 4 years. The twins clung tighter to Stella's legs, their small bodies shaking, yet their eyes wide and innocent, watching the confrontation with a mixture of fear and curiosity, their tiny hands clutching her clothing as though it could shield them from the storm erupting around them. Keron's mind raced, calculating distance, speed, angles, possibilities, instinct and experience, colliding in perfect synchronicity, preparing him to counter, to attack, to protect, while the masked man's eyes glinted cold and cruel, and he reloaded the gun with deliberate slowness, each click of the mechanism echoing through the park like the beat of a drum, signaling impending danger, and his words came out cold, deliberate, dripping with menace. Round 2. The threat hung in the air, heavy, tangible, a shadow stretching over them, taunting them, daring Keron to act, daring him to falter, daring him to fail. Stella's breathing became shallow, rapid, panic setting every nerve on fire. And the twins' small heads peeked from behind her knees, their innocence a fragile barrier, Keron was determined to defend with everything he had, every ounce of strength, every last bit of rage. And in that heartbeat of tension, Keron felt the weight of years lost, of moments he could never reclaim, crushing him and fueling him simultaneously, each pulse pounding like a war drum in his chest, calling him to action, to fury, to protect what was finally his. The masked man's shadow stretched across the gravel path, his movement precise, controlled, predatory, and Keron felt the electric charge of imminent violence snap through the air, a tangible current that made the hair on his arms stand, and yet he did not flinch, did not hesitate, did not allow the fear to break him. Stella's eyes flickered between Keron and the approaching threat. Wide, terrified, full of questions she dared not voice, her hands clenching the twins so tightly their tiny nails pressed into her palms, and Keron felt every second stretch into eternity, the world narrowing to nothing but the three of them, the masked man and the crackling tension that could erupt into violence at any moment. The park, once peaceful, now felt like a war zone. Every shadow a potential strike, every distant noise amplified by adrenaline, and Keron's gaze sharpened, scanning for any vulnerability, any escape route, any chance to end the threat before it could harm Stella or the children. The masked man raised his weapon again, deliberate, precise, and Keron's body responded before thought could catch up. A blur of controlled aggression, pain, and instinct, each motion fueled by desperation and love. A whirlwind of motion designed to protect, to dominate, to survive. Stella's gasp cut through the evening air, the twins squealing softly in fright as Keron adjusted, shifting his stance, ready to take any blow, any bullet, any risk, because he could no longer allow the past to dictate the present. And in that moment, he realized that every ounce of power he had amassed, every violent decision, every moment of ruthless control had led him here, to defend a family he had only just discovered and could not afford to lose. The masked man's shadow lingered ominously, a taunting presence, reloading, preparing, testing Keron, Stella, and the twins. The park silent except for the soft shuffle of leaves in the wind and the tension-soaked breaths of those trapped in the deadly tableau, and Keron's heart hammered with anticipation, pain, and fury, knowing that at any second the fragile line between survival and tragedy could snap, leaving everything he had just found shattered in the park like glass, and as the masked man's cold voice echoed, the words, "Round 2, slicing through the night like a knife. Keron felt the weight of the moment, the responsibility, the fear, the rage, and the unrelenting need to act, all colliding in perfect combustible chaos, leaving him teetering on the edge of instinct and reason, knowing that the next move would determine whether the family in front of him survived or became another casualty of the darkness that had always surrounded him. Keron didn't pause for a second. Every ounce of strength, every drop of adrenaline surged through him as he shoved Stella and the twins into the back seat of his sleek black car, his shoulder burning with sharp, almost blinding pain from the bullet wound, blood trailing down his arm, mixing with the sweat of exertion and fury. He slammed the door shut, sliding into the driver's seat with a force that rattled the vehicle, engine roaring to life, tires squealing as he peeled away from the park, leaving behind the chaos and danger they had just narrowly escaped. Stella fumbled in the back, pressing a trembling hand against his shoulder, trying to stem the bleeding with a scrap of cloth she had hastily grabbed from her purse. Her fingers shook violently, but her eyes burned with a mixture of fear, guilt, and exhaustion, her body quivering as the twins clung to her sides, their small heads tucked under her chin, their wide eyes glancing back at Keron as if they understood the threat wasn't over. The city lights streaked past, a blur of yellow and red. and Keron's grip on the steering wheel tightened until his knuckles turned white. The sharp pain in his shoulder, a constant reminder that every second mattered, that hesitation could cost them everything. "Why didn't you tell me?" Keron rasped, voice breaking under the weight of shock, fury, and a deep, aching grief that had lived in him for 4 long years. His gaze was piercing, unwavering, and filled with a mix of accusation and desperation. Stella swallowed hard, tears welling in her eyes as the twins clutched her arms, sensing the storm in the air, sensing the love and rage intertwined in Keron's voice. "Because the moment I found out I was pregnant, your enemies got worse," she admitted, voice trembling but steady enough to pierce the quiet tension of the car, her eyes meeting his with raw honesty, her lips trembling under the weight of years of secrets and fear. "If they ever learned about our babies, you would have died protecting us," she whispered, each word a dagger cutting into the layers of Keron's soul, shattering the remnants of his composure. He exhaled sharply, jaw tightening, emotion crashing through him in a violent wave. Rage, love, guilt, regret, longing, all colliding at once, leaving him breathless and unsteady on his seat. His fingers dug into the steering wheel as he fought to contain the storm inside him. "Stella, losing you destroyed me," he admitted, voice raw and trembling. "I would have chosen you every single time." The confession hung in the air, thick, heavy, impossible to ignore, and Stella's mouth parted in shock, guilt twisting her face, her hands shaking as she tried to soothe the twins. But her body could not stop the tremors of emotion that coursed through her. Before the words could settle, before any fragile sense of reconciliation could bloom between them, Keron's phone buzzed violently on the dashboard. The screen flashed with a blocked number, a chilling message that made his chest tighten and blood run cold despite the adrenaline still pumping through him. He snatched the phone, reading the words with his teeth clenched so hard he feared breaking them. "Bring the twins to the old warehouse tonight. No police, no backup, or Stella dies." His breath hitched, his grip on the wheel tightening until his knuckles whitened, every muscle in his body coiling with deadly determination. The message carried no hesitation, no mercy, just pure, cold threat, and the urgency wrapped around his heart like a vice. Stella gasped behind him, her hands clinging to the seat, tears streaming down her face, and her wide, panicked eyes met his in desperate fear. The twins pressed close to her, sensing the terror radiating from both adults, their small bodies shaking as the weight of danger pressed down upon them from all sides. Keron's mind raced at an impossible speed, calculating, planning, imagining the worst, and yet refusing to falter, refusing to allow the darkness to touch his family. He could feel the blood from his shoulder, oozing, burning through the pain, but he didn't care. Nothing mattered except keeping Stella and the twins alive, and finding the person who dared threaten them. A cold realization hit him as he read the message again. "Someone close to me betrayed us." His voice was low, guttural, raw with the weight of betrayal as he whispered, more to himself than to Stella, "Someone close to me betrayed us." The words struck like thunder, echoing through the car, through the city streets, through the fragile cocoon of safety they had momentarily created. Every memory of loyalty, every trusted hand he had ever counted on in his empire, flashed in his mind like a warning signal. His eyes narrowed, the fire in them sharper, darker, more dangerous than ever before. He could feel the heat of vengeance rising inside him, his entire body tensed for action, for blood, for justice. He pressed his shoulder harder against the wheel as pain lanced through it, but he ignored it, forcing every ounce of attention into the survival of the family in his car. Stella's sobs were quiet but relentless, muffled against the twins, and Keron's eyes softened briefly, burning with both rage and protective love. He knew this was no longer just about revenge. This was about survival, about family, about the mistakes he had made and the years he could never get back. The city around them blurred as he drove faster, weaving through traffic with a precision born of years running from danger and orchestrating chaos. Every streetlight, every honking horn, every distant siren sharpened the intensity, each second a reminder of how fragile their lives were. Stella's hands trembled as she checked on the twins, muttering soothing words to calm them, and Keron's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror again and again, searching for taillights, for shadows, for any indication that the danger had not yet passed. His mind worked on two planes simultaneously, one on the road, one on the immediate threat, and one on the deeper puzzle, the secret Stella had carried alone, the years of silence, the enemies they didn't even know were still watching. Every breath he took was measured, sharp, purposeful, as if slowing down could mean death for all of them. Yet, even with the chaos, he found a fragile, fierce determination in the fact that they were finally together. That the family he had lost was finally here in front of him, even in the face of a storm that could destroy them all. Stella looked at him, tear-streaked and exhausted, and whispered, "I'm so sorry. I had to keep them safe. I couldn't risk you knowing. I couldn't risk losing you, too." Her voice cracked under the weight of years, and Keron's hand itched to reach for her, to pull her close, to assure her that he would never leave again, that he would never allow another day of fear to touch her or the boys. But he couldn't. He had to focus. Every decision, every thought, every movement was critical. He pressed the accelerator further, feeling the raw power of the car under him, the hum of the engine a comforting, almost meditative force against the chaos threatening to consume them. The twins squirmed slightly in Stella's lap, sensing the tension but finding comfort in her presence, and Keron's heart ached with a mixture of longing and rage, a mix so intense he could hardly distinguish one from the other. His mind replayed every memory of the life they could have had, every stolen moment, every lost hug, every silent wish he had buried deep inside him. And now, all of it demanded action. All of it demanded protection. All of it demanded blood and fire if necessary. He took a sharp turn onto a dimly lit street, eyes scanning for any sign of pursuit. The city had become a labyrinth of potential traps, and Keron's mind worked like a machine, plotting, anticipating, calculating. He could feel the masked man's presence lingering in his thoughts, the memory of the bullet, the fear in Stella's voice, the innocence in the twins' eyes, all fueling a single, unstoppable purpose: to survive, to protect, to reclaim what had been stolen from him. And just as the car rounded a corner, the phone buzzed again. Another blocked number, another silent threat, another confirmation that the danger was far from over. Keron's jaw clenched, muscles coiling like steel, and his dark eyes narrowed into dangerous slits as he whispered again, almost to himself, "I will not let them take you. I will not. I swear." Stella looked at him, awe and fear mingling in her gaze, understanding that the man before her, the ruthless Mafia boss, the man she once left, was now their only protector, their only hope, their only chance to survive the storm closing in on them. The twins nestled closer to her, their small breathing steady but cautious, and Keron felt the weight of the night pressing on him. The betrayal he had just discovered, the danger stalking them, the unknown enemies waiting, and yet, in that moment, amidst blood, pain, and fear, he felt something else as well, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel for years: purpose, fierce, undeniable, burning purpose, to protect the family he had lost and found again, no matter the cost. The black SUV's threat still burned in Keron's mind as he guided the car through the quiet streets of the city, his dark eyes scanning every shadow, every alley, every hint of movement. Blood still trickled from his shoulder, stinging with every pulse, but adrenaline drowned out the pain. Each turn brought them closer to the fortress he called home, a place where he believed they would finally find safety. The gates of his mansion rose before them like silent sentinels, black iron bars stretching toward the night sky, adorned with spikes that gleamed under the dim light. The driveway was lined with familiar statues, cold and majestic, meant to intimidate intruders, and Keron felt a momentary relief wash over him. For the first time since the chaos in the park, he allowed himself a shaky exhale, imagining the warmth of security, the illusion that the worst might finally be behind them. Stella sank into the back seat, gripping the twins closer, her chest heaving, her small hands still trembling from the fear that had clung to them like a second skin. Keron's knuckles were white as he parked the car, his senses on edge despite the appearance of calm. Every instinct screamed that the danger wasn't gone. He felt it in the air, the heavy silence, the way the shadows lingered unnaturally around the mansion's perimeter. As they stepped out, Stella's knees nearly buckled from exhaustion, the twins' tiny hands clutching at her clothing, and she exhaled slowly, the first semblance of relief in days washing over her as the massive front doors of the mansion opened like a promise of sanctuary. Keron's gaze swept the grounds with meticulous caution, noting every shadow, every possible point of vulnerability. Yet for a fleeting heartbeat, the tension seemed to lift. He led Stella and the twins inside, the grand halls familiar, every marble floor polished and gleaming under the warm chandelier light. The twins giggled softly, their innocence a sharp contrast to the violence they had narrowly escaped. And for a brief, fleeting moment, Keron allowed himself a half-smile, imagining a life where such laughter could survive. But the moment was fleeting. A shift in the air, subtle but unmistakable, made his blood run cold. From the corner of the hall, Mason stepped forward, his face tight, guilt etched deep in every line, his eyes avoiding Keron's for a heartbeat too long. "Boss, I didn't want it to come to this," Mason said, his voice low, carefully measured, yet laced with something Keron couldn't immediately place. A shadow of betrayal hiding beneath practiced calm. Keron froze. Every nerve screamed that something was wrong. His chest tightened, and Stella's hands went to the twins, pulling them close as her eyes widened with sudden fear. She sensed the shift instantly, the subtle betrayal that hung between them like a dagger poised for blood. And then it happened. The other guards, silent until now, stepped from the shadows, surrounding them, guns raised and ready. The metallic click of weapons being readied echoed ominously through the marble halls, each sound a hammer striking Keron's chest. Mason's smirk was bitter, cold, and deliberate. "The twins change everything, Keron," he said, every word weighted with menace. "Whoever controls them controls the future." Rage exploded inside Keron, a scorching inferno igniting through every fiber of his being. Pain from his shoulder fading under the sheer intensity of his fury. He took a step forward, ready to strike, ready to tear down everything in his path, but then he noticed something unexpected. A small movement, fragile yet deliberate. One of the twins, sensing neither fear nor malice, stepped forward holding a small familiar object in his tiny hand, Stella's old silver locket. The locket opened as the boy moved, and Keron's eyes immediately locked onto the tiny, gleaming memory chip that slipped out from its hidden compartment, catching the light in a dangerous glimmer. His breath hitched, a mixture of realization and dread washing over him. Stella gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, eyes wide with horror as she finally understood the stakes of what the boy held in his innocent hands. The guard stiffened. Sensing the significance of the small object, the shift in control now tangible, a silent weapon in the palm of a child. Mason stepped closer, voice soft but lethal, his words slicing through the tension with icy precision. That chip is what they've been hunting for. Give it to me or your sons die." The words hung in the air like a black cloud, the threat crystal clear, and Keron felt the walls of his world collapse around him in an instant. His mind raced at impossible speed, calculating the impossible. How Mason, his most trusted guard, could betray him, how enemies had infiltrated his sanctuary, and what lengths they were willing to go to obtain the chip that now rested in the hands of his child. His eyes flicked from Mason to the twins to Stella, assessing, calculating, burning with protective rage, knowing that the smallest hesitation could cost them everything. The twins clutched each other instinctively, unaware of the full weight of danger but sensing it nonetheless. Their innocence a sharp, piercing contrast to the lethal threat surrounding them. Keron's shoulder burned with pain, but it was nothing compared to the searing fury, the choking fear, the unrelenting desire to protect them at any cost. Stella whispered, barely audible, "Keron, we can't. We can't give it to them." Her voice cracked, her body trembling, and Keron's hands tightened into fists, knuckles digging into his palms as his mind began orchestrating the impossible, mapping escape routes, calculating force, determining every move that could save them. Mason's smirk widened, cruel and knowing, the aura of betrayal twisting the tension tighter. Tightening the knot in Keron's chest as he realized the extent of the trap they had walked into. Every memory of loyalty shattered in a heartbeat, replaced with a blazing need for justice, survival, and vengeance. The mansion's silence became suffocating, broken only by the soft breathing of the twins and the quiet shuffle of guards shifting their weight, weapons trained, awaiting the next order. Keron's mind raced, imagining the smallest misstep, the tiniest hesitation, the worst-case scenario, and yet his focus sharpened, his instincts primed. He could see it all, the betrayal, the chip, the leverage, the threat to his sons, and he knew that one wrong move, 1 second of doubt, and everything he had fought to reclaim would be lost forever. Mason's words repeated in his head like a death knell. "Give it to me, or your sons die." Keron's lips pressed into a hard line, his entire body coiling with a mixture of rage, desperation, and the burning need to protect what was his. The air thickened, the danger tangible, every heartbeat synchronized with the threat, every nerve screaming, every muscle prepared to strike. And Keron understood that in this moment he faced not just betrayal, but the ultimate test of everything he had ever valued. And as he stepped forward, shadowed by rage and fatherly determination, his mind already forming impossible strategies, Stella's eyes met his, a silent plea for him to survive, to act, to protect, and the twins, unaware of the magnitude of the threat but trusting implicitly, clung to her, leaving Keron with one certainty: there would be no mercy, no hesitation, and no failure. The game had begun inside the walls he had believed were impregnable, and the cost of losing was a price Keron could never pay. 6. Keron's body moved before his mind could even fully register the danger, every instinct screaming as he lunged forward, propelled by a mix of pain, fury, and a father's protective instinct that left no room for hesitation. Mason's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second as Keron's massive frame collided with his, the impact rattling through the mansion's polished halls. The sound of gunmetal clashing and boots sliding against marble filled the air, echoing like thunder, while the twins screamed and Stella's voice pierced the chaos with terror. Keron's muscles burned with every strike, his shoulder still wounded, each movement drawing a sharp line of agony through him. But pain had no place here. It was irrelevant compared to the lives at stake. He twisted, dodging a swing from another guard, knocking him off balance, and swung back with precision that was ruthless, calculated, and terrifying. Every punch, every kick, every maneuver was a declaration. No one would touch his family. His mind raced in parallel with his fists, tracking every opponent, anticipating every strike, mapping exits, and calculating the safest path to reach Stella and the twins. Behind a marble pillar, Stella pressed the boys close to her chest, the locket clutched tightly in her trembling hands. Her body shook as she whispered, almost to herself, "Keron, stop. They only want the chip." Her words barely cut through the cacophony of shouts, gunfire, and crashing furniture, yet Keron's ears caught them, sharpening his focus even further. Tears streamed down her cheeks, glistening in the ambient chandelier light, and she continued, voice breaking under the weight of 4 years of secrecy. "This chip has the names of every man involved in your father's murder, including the ones who threatened to kill our babies." The words hit Keron like a lightning strike, halting his furious assault for just a heartbeat. His fists froze mid-air, his chest heaving as shock sliced through him with icy precision, unraveling years of confusion, regret, and pain. Every moment of secrecy, every unexplained fear Stella had carried, every stolen glance, every hidden move she had made to protect him, it all made sense in a horrifying, exhilarating instant. His mind grappled with the revelation, trying to catch the threads of betrayal, strategy, and survival, all intertwined into a single, devastating truth. "You carried this alone?" he whispered, voice hoarse, trembling with heartbreak and awe, his blood pounding in his ears louder than the chaos around him. Stella's eyes met his, glimmering with exhaustion, sorrow, and unwavering determination. "I had to," she sobbed, her voice breaking, trembling like fragile glass under immense pressure. "To keep you alive." Keron's heart constricted painfully, then expanded in a wave of emotion so intense it made him stagger slightly on his feet. Pain, fury, love, and relief collided, fracturing and rebuilding him in a single, violent instant. Something inside him broke and healed simultaneously, years of regret evaporating into a burning resolve to never let her bear any more of this alone. With a guttural roar, Keron's fury crystallized into action. He surged toward Mason, catching the traitorous guard off guard, driving him backward with sheer force and crushing him to the cold marble floor with a bone-shattering impact. Mason gasped, sputtering, his smirk wiped away by pure terror as Keron's dominance became undeniable, a force that left no room for challenge. The other guards faltered under the intensity of Keron's assault, some ducking, some backing away, unable to contend with the perfect storm of pain-fueled precision and unrelenting rage. Within minutes, the revolt that threatened his family was eradicated. Keron's body moved with lethal precision, every strike calculated to incapacitate without unnecessary risk to Stella or the twins. Yet no one doubted that he would unleash total destruction if they endangered his family further. His gaze finally darted to Stella, relief threatening to wash through him. But before he could close the distance, the mansion's lights flickered violently, plunging parts of the room into shadow. A sharp, mechanical beep cut through the chaos, and Keron's eyes snapped to the massive digital screen in the main hall. It had been ignored in the confusion until now, but the numbers glared at him with the precision of doom. ECU's hour row to gozo 3. 3 seconds. His heart skipped violently, his mind screaming with urgency. A bomb, seconds from exploding. His chest tightened, a primal terror clawing at him, yet he could feel the focus sharpening, the rush of adrenaline making his wounded body move faster than thought. Every second became an eternity. He estimated distances, calculated escape routes, and scanned the position of the twins, Stella, and remaining threats with uncanny clarity. Stella's hands clutched the locket tighter, eyes wide, cheeks streaked with tears. "Keron, it's the bomb," she cried, her voice cracking with sheer terror. The twins whimpered, sensing the danger, pressing closer to their mother's chest. Keron's voice rose above the chaos, guttural, commanding, and resolute. "Stay behind me, don't move, trust me." He moved like a shadow across the room, dodging debris, kicking aside fallen furniture, calculating every fraction of a second. The pain in his shoulder, an afterthought. Every instinct told him that hesitation could cost lives, that the chip, the betrayal, the bomb, and the safety of his newfound family all converged in this single impossible moment. Time seemed to distort, each heartbeat stretching, each second cracking like glass, and Keron's mind burned with strategy and resolve. He felt Mason's bloodied body against his boot, the chill of marble under his hands, the rapid breathing of Stella and the twins behind him, all of it grounding him in a singular purpose. There was no plan but survival, no thought but protection, and no fear he would not confront if it meant keeping them alive. The countdown loomed, relentless, a digital heartbeat of imminent destruction. And the mansion itself seemed to tremble under the tension. Every shadow could hide a threat, every sound could signal doom, and yet Keron's eyes burned with clarity, his muscles coiled for a final decisive action. The chaos and adrenaline created a surreal rhythm, bullets still ricocheting off the walls, shards of marble scattering, the scent of gunpowder and blood mixing with the metallic tang of fear. Yet Keron's mind operated on one singular truth. He would not lose them. The twins' innocent faces, Stella's trembling form, the betrayal he had just survived, all of it forged a tunnel vision of lethal precision. He scanned the room, eyes catching the locket in Stella's hands, the chip glinting in its tiny compartment, Mason groaning at his feet, and the digital timer counting mercilessly down, 002, 01. The tension stretched so thin that it felt as though the air itself could shatter. Keron's lips pressed into a thin line, the world narrowing to seconds, threats, and one impossible mission: save his family, keep the chip safe, and survive the explosion that threatened to consume everything he had fought to reclaim. The mansion's walls seemed to pulse with the weight of the imminent destruction, shadows stretching unnaturally, the air vibrating with the potential of catastrophe. He lunged forward, dragging Stella and the twins toward the nearest exit, his shoulders screaming in protest. Yet he moved faster than thought, faster than fear, faster than the world itself. And just as the final second hit, the timer flickered, the lights flashed, and Keron's muscles coiled. Every nerve firing, every ounce of strength focused, every instinct screaming in the singular, undeniable truth. Either they survived this, or the world he had built would be consumed in flames, leaving nothing behind but betrayal, devastation, and the unthinkable loss of the family he had just reclaimed. 7. Keron's lungs burned as he dragged Stella and the twins through the crumbling hallway, each step resonating with the roar of fire consuming the mansion behind them. Flames licked the walls, devouring the marble and wood with hungry intensity, a deafening roar that shook the floors beneath their feet. The heat pressed against them like a physical weight, yet Keron moved with unwavering precision, shielding them with his own body, refusing to let even a trace of smoke touch the children's innocent skin. His shoulder throbbed violently from the previous fight, but pain was secondary to survival. The twins clutched Stella tightly, small fingers gripping her clothes as though their fragile hold could anchor them to safety. Keron's eyes darted through the smoke, scanning exits, calculating trajectories, every second a battle against time and destruction. The scent of burning timber and gunpowder mingled in the air, thick and suffocating, yet his mind remained clear. Only one goal mattered: get them out alive. As debris fell around them, Keron could feel the heat singeing his hair, the walls trembling with the power of the firestorm, yet he never faltered. Each step was deliberate, each movement shielded, and each breath a conscious effort to stay focused. Stella pressed herself against him instinctively. The twins' tiny bodies nestled between them, their small heads brushing against Keron's chest. The explosion had shattered everything familiar, yet in the center of chaos, Keron found a singular clarity. This was their rebirth. Every instinct, every decision, every ounce of violence and control that had once defined him now served a purpose that was pure and unbreakable, protecting the family he had lost and found again. Finally, the front doors gave way beneath the Inferno's force, splintering into jagged pieces. Keron surged forward, dragging Stella and the twins into the night air. The sudden contrast of the cool evening against the blistering heat behind them felt surreal, almost like stepping between two worlds, the death of one life and the fragile birth of another. Smoke trailed them, curling around his shoulders and hair. And Keron forced himself not to inhale too deeply, careful to protect the children. He could hear Stella's ragged breaths, the twins whimpering softly against her, and his own chest ached not from the fight or the fire, but from a rush of relief so profound it brought tears to his eyes. He pulled them closer, his arms a protective cage, every movement filled with the awareness that the world they had known was gone, and only what he held now mattered. Stella sobbed, her head pressing against his chest as she trembled violently. "You'll die for us," she whispered, her voice raw with fear and exhaustion, yet filled with the trust and love she had carried silently for 4 years. Keron cupped her face gently, brushing hair from her tear-streaked cheeks, his lips hovering near hers but not yet closing. "I'll live for you now," he said, his voice hoarse, raw, and imbued with a sincerity that carried the weight of every regret, every longing, and every suppressed emotion he had carried for far too long. The words seemed to hang in the night air like a promise, tethering them to hope amid devastation. The twins, sensing the emotional gravity between them, nestled closer, small hands clutching at Keron's chest, a living reminder of the love and life they were all fighting to protect. Hours later, they arrived at a safe house, a modest sanctuary far from the chaos, far from enemies, far from the world that had once threatened to tear them apart. The twins, exhausted from the day's terror, slept soundly between them, their small chests rising and falling in rhythm, untroubled by the dangers that had stalked them. Keron sank into the armchair beside Stella, his body trembling from adrenaline, pain, and emotional release. He finally allowed himself to speak the words he had kept locked away for 4 long years. "I never stopped loving you," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper, trembling with honesty and vulnerability. "Leaving you, leaving all of you, was my biggest mistake. Seeing them, seeing our boys, it nearly stopped my heart." Stella's own tears flowed freely now, her voice choked with emotion. "We still need you. I still love you," she whispered, the weight of 4 years compressed into a single, vulnerable confession. Keron pulled her close, feeling the warmth of her body, the softness of her hair, and the fragile strength that had kept her alive through every threat, every betrayal, every lonely night. His lips pressed against hers in a deep, trembling kiss, a kiss that spoke of forgiveness, of longing, of unspoken promises, and of a future they could finally reclaim. Each second stretched into eternity as the world outside remained silent, holding its breath, allowing them this fleeting moment of peace. The twins stirred in their sleep, murmuring softly, their presence a reminder of everything Keron now had to protect. He looked at Stella, brushing tears from her face, cupping her jaw gently. "We go home," she whispered, voice soft but resolute, leaning against him as though seeking the anchor she had been denied for so long. Keron nodded, wrapping his arms tightly around her and the boys, every muscle coiling with determination, every fiber of his being dedicated to the family he had nearly lost. The fire behind them had consumed the past, but from the ashes, a new life, a new family, and a new purpose emerged. In the stillness of the night, As dawn began to paint the sky with soft gold and pink hues, Keron finally allowed himself a smile, a real, unguarded smile. He looked down at the twins, sleeping peacefully, their little hands resting on him and Stella, and whispered under his breath, "No one will ever take you from me again." Stella pressed her forehead against his chest, her own heart finally unburdened, whispering, "We're together now. Always." Keron's arms tightened, his body a fortress around them, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that love, family, and redemption were not just fleeting illusions, but realities he would fight for with every breath he had left. As the first rays of sunlight broke fully over the horizon, Keron, Stella, and their sons stood together in the safe house's small courtyard. The world beyond remained dangerous, uncertain, and fraught with enemies. But for now, there was peace, and more importantly, there was family. Keron's gaze swept across the horizon, eyes hardening with resolve. No longer would he be the man who walked away. No longer would he let fear, pride, or past mistakes dictate his life. The flames of the past had forged a new resolve, burning away weakness, leaving only clarity. He would protect this family, cherish this love, and fight for every moment, every day, every breath. And as Stella rested against him, the twins nestled between them, and the city slowly awoke around the safe house, Keron whispered softly, almost to himself, "We're home. Finally, we're home." Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey today. I hope Keron and Stella's story stayed with you and touched your heart as much as it did mine. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. How would you have felt in their place? If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you never miss a tale from Heart-Woven Tales. And remember, every ending is just the beginning of another story. See you in the next chapter.